Have you ever been to a place where, once you left, you felt you were no longer the same person? Where silence isn't peace, but a warning? Australia is known for its stunning beaches and modern cities. But deep inland, within the outback, a wild, dry, isolated land so vast there's no signal, lie places where time, spirits, and reality seem to blur into one. Today, you'll join me in exploring the 10 eeriest locations in Australia, places no one ever returns from quite the same. 1. Wycliffe, Well, Northern Territory. In the middle of the arid desert of the Northern Territory sits a tiny roadside stop called Wycliffe Well. At first glance, it looks like any old gas station along the Stuart Highway, empty, sunburnt, with faded signs. But this is more than a rest stop. It's called Australia's UFO capital. Since World War II, there have been hundreds of reports of strange lights in the night sky. But what's scarier is that time doesn't always function normally here. In 2014, a couple driving through stopped here around midnight, fueled up, rested for about 30 minutes, then continued on. But when they reached the next town, just 80 kilometers away, it was almost noon the next day. Their car was fine. No evidence they had stayed longer. But their dash cam, phones, and GPS all lost about 10 hours of data. One camper recalled seeing a glowing orb hovering above the sand, silent, casting no shadow, yet warping the air like a heat wave. When he turned back around, his tent, backpack, even flashlight had been rearranged, like something had moved everything in seconds. Locals say only one thing: sometimes this place sees you before you see it. 2. Hanging Rock, Victoria. North of Melbourne in Victoria, a massive basalt outcrop rises from the forest. Hanging Rock. But no one comes here just for the scenery. It became infamous after a 1900 school picnic when 3 girls and a teacher climbed the summit and never returned. No footprints, no screams, no bodies. The story became legend. But disappearances didn't stop. Hikers report their watches stop near the eastern cliff. Compasses spin wildly. Birdsong ceases. And the wind reverses direction unnaturally. A park ranger once heard someone whisper his name. A soft female voice, using his real name, even though he was alone and had never shared it. A filmmaker captured strange audio while setting up a shot atop the rock. Giggling girls echoing like wind with no clear direction. Rewinding the clip, the laughter sounded closer. Locals say at night, strange lights float atop the summit. Not flashlights, not moonlight, but soft white glows drifting in the dark. No one can prove anything, but everyone agrees. Hanging Rock is not a place to linger. 3. Wolf Creek Crater, Western Australia. Deep in remote Kimberley, surrounded by desolate desert, lies a massive circular scar. Wolf Creek Crater. Formed by a meteor 300,000 years ago, the place is eerily beautiful. A perfect circle carved into red, cracked earth. To local indigenous people, this is not just a cosmic relic. It's the Eye of Jaru, an ancient spirit guarding the doorway between worlds. Visitors report unease standing on the rim, light headaches, rapid heartbeat without reason. Some become disoriented, even on clear days with no obstacles. One man photographed his friend at the edge, only to see 2 identical people in the shot. Same clothes, same pose, but they were a group of 3, and no one stood next to him. A woman said she saw herself on the far side of the crater. Still, silent, just staring back. Radiation and magnetic readings here often spike. Authorities have no solid explanation. To tourists, Wolf Creek is majestic, but to those who've been and returned, it's a fracture in perception, a place where reality might split in two. These places don't just make people disappear, they begin to blur you too. But in part 2, things get stranger. Time flows differently. Shadows ignore physics. And when you enter, you might not know what time you're in. Are you ready to step into the next chapter, where time is no longer a trustworthy concept? 4. Aradale Asylum, Victoria. In the quiet town of Ararat, Victoria, lies Aradale Asylum, once one of Australia's largest mental institutions. From 1867 until its closure in the 1990s, it housed over 13,000 patients, and few of them ever left. Now abandoned, the long hallways, locked rooms, and worn staircases remain untouched. But things start to shift the moment you enter. Sound changes. Your voice echoes strangely, and time slows down. One visitor said he began his tour at 2:00 p.m., walked through the site for about 45 minutes, but when he checked his phone outside, it was nearly 5:00 p.m. 3 hours gone, with no memory of them. A tour guide reported once being locked in room 13 during a routine check. The door shut by itself, and the lights flickered. For 15 minutes, he heard the soft giggling of children, even though the asylum never had a pediatric ward. When they checked the security footage, the cameras showed only static. The feed cut out at exactly 2:13:13, the moment he entered. Many believe that time in Aradale doesn't stop. It loops, repeats, a collective memory sealed inside thick, suffocating walls. 5. Monte Cristo, Homestead, New South Wales. Near the town of Junee, the Monte Cristo homestead sits alone atop a hill, a Victorian mansion built in 1885 by the wealthy and powerful Crawley family. But since the lady of the house died in 1933, it's never been quite right. Workers report footsteps pacing the halls at night, stopping outside closed doors, then vanishing. The main staircase creaks as though someone is climbing, but no one ever appears. One man who stayed overnight said he dreamt of himself leaving the house, but the eyes in the dream weren't his. When he awoke, his bedside lamp was shattered. His wristwatch was stopped at exactly 3:33 a.m. Another common phenomenon is fogged mirrors, despite empty rooms and dry air. Some guests have wiped the glass, only to see a face over their shoulder that wasn't theirs. Monte Cristo doesn't scare you with blood. It makes you question whether your perception still belongs to you. 6. Gundabooka, National Park, New South Wales. Gundabooka is sacred land to the Ngamba people, a place where ancient creation ancestors are said to have shaped the world from earth, stone, and spirit. Located in the remote western part of New South Wales, the park is wild and beautiful. But there's one rule passed down through generations: never enter the southern forest after sunset. Why? Because it is where the ancestor spirits rest. One film crew installed cameras in the restricted zone. After just one night, all memory cards were wiped. The equipment malfunctioned, but one frame remained: a blurry, white figure squatting in front of the lens, as if watching. A local man recounted walking past the area at dusk, hearing breath on the back of his neck. He turned. No one. But his watch had jumped forward 2 hours, and the sun had long vanished. Gundabooka doesn't scare you with darkness. It bends time, gently, and waits to see when you'll notice. 7. Old Adelaide Gaol, South Australia. One of Australia's oldest and most infamous prisons, the Old Adelaide Gaol, held thousands of criminals and witnessed more than 40 executions. Today, its thick walls, barred windows, and stone corridors are heritage. But the spirits inside haven't left. Guides report hearing knocks on cell doors at night. 3 slow taps. Open the door, no one's there. Then the knocking continues, from the opposite cell. A woman on a night tour said she heard chains dragging along the floor and felt someone tug gently at her dress. She turned around. No one. In the old execution chamber, guests often describe irregular heartbeats, shortness of breath, or hearing soft moans underfoot, as if the floor itself remembers someone's final fall. Cameras frequently glitch. Temperatures drop sharply in cell block C, once home to death row inmates. And if you switch on your flashlight, sometimes a shadow darts across the wall, with no reflection on the floor. You've just passed through places where time breaks its own rules, stretching, folding, or vanishing altogether. But in part 3, it's not just time that warps, it's you. Because in the shadows of the Outback, you're not always the only one looking. 8. The Nullarbor Plain, South and Western Australia. Stretching across South and Western Australia, the Nullarbor Plain is a vast, flat, treeless expanse. Hundreds of kilometers of limestone, blinding sun, and a horizon that never ends. It's often called the loneliest place in Australia. And also, a place people pass through, but aren't always sure they've truly left. The famous Eyre Highway cuts through the plain, a stretch of road known for bizarre incidents, cars vanishing overnight, lost time, and drivers waking up somewhere else with no memory of how they got there. One trucker said he parked along the roadside at 2 a.m. to sleep in his cab. When he woke up, the sun was high, and his truck had somehow turned completely around. No one had touched the wheel. The doors were still locked, but nearly 6 hours had passed. Another man said that while driving through the night, he saw a woman in white standing by the roadside. When he slowed down, she vanished. But a few kilometers later, she was there again, in the exact same spot. Locals believe this land holds on to the memories of those who pass. And if you drive too far, for too long, it will begin to replay those memories in ways you didn't ask for. 9. New Norcia Monastery, Western Australia. Tucked away more than 130 kilometers from Perth, New Norcia is Australia's only monastic town, a Benedictine Catholic community founded in 1847. Its whitewashed walls, ancient chapels, and stone corridors feel frozen in time. But not everything here belongs to God. At midnight, it's said you can hear monophonic chanting echoing from the empty chapel. No instruments, no choir, just a lone male voice, singing in ancient Latin, Kyrie eleison, Lord, have mercy. A visitor once took a photo of the old dormitory. In the image, a headless monk, cloaked in black, walking away. But when he turned to look, the hallway was empty. Guests who stay in the monastery dorms report footsteps pacing steadily through the halls. When they go to check, no one is there. But the stone floor bears fresh, wet footprints, even when it hasn't rained. Perhaps in New Norcia, some spirits never completed their final prayer, and faith has become the chain that keeps them bound. 10. Lake Mungo, New South Wales. Lake Mungo is no longer a lake, at least not anymore. It's a dry, ancient lakebed located in Mungo National Park, where archaeologists discovered the remains of Mungo Man and Mungo Lady, 2 ancient humans buried over 40,000 years ago. The site is sacred to the Barkanji, Muti Muti, and Ngiampa peoples, And if you step in the wrong place, you will be heard. Researchers once set up camp to study the area's wind and sound patterns. On the first night, they recorded what they assumed were animal footsteps circling their tents. But in the morning, there were no tracks, just small, swirling spiral patterns in the sand, like someone had been walking in circles. One photographer returned home with hundreds of shots. But in one photo, he appeared standing alone on a dune, even though he had taken the picture and no one else was with him. Locals believe this is a watching place. The ancient spirits do not interfere, but they listen. And if you disrespect the land, they will leave their voice in your dreams. Someone once said, "I woke up at 2 a.m. and felt like my dream wasn't over. It had spilled into reality." Ever since, they've heard whispers in a strange language right by their ear, even at home, hundreds of kilometers from Mungo. From impact craters to dry lake beds, from scorched deserts to abandoned monasteries, you've just walked through places where time, reality, and the human soul are no longer separate. Some people come back from these places and never dream again. Others say they heard something, and now that something hears them back. The Outback doesn't try to hold you. It simply watches to see how much of yourself you leave behind. Comment below. Which place chilled you the most? And where should I take you next? A cemetery buried in sand, a town with no map, or a trail where time is locked in stone? Because in places no one dares to name, something is always whispering, "I'm still here."